In this video, I'm going to share with you a tip that will help you immediately improve your paintings using colors. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. And today we're going to talk about colors. And this is something I talked about a few times in the past. The tip I want to share with you is to preserve the purity of the colors and really allow each and every individual color to shine. I think this adds a lot of interest to artwork, and as long as you get the other things accurately, the drawing and the values, it could make a whole difference. And I would notice that even when I get a lot of things accurately, sometimes I don't like the result as much. Something's a little off with the color scheme and the harmony and the atmosphere. So what I want to suggest to you today is I'm going to show you a really cool way of making sure that doesn't happen. Now the rest is up to you. You need to make sure that your drawing is relatively accurate and everything is fine in that sense. And drawing is really important. I would suggest to focus a lot on that, generally speaking. But with the color side of things, the color selection, I'm going to show you how by using the pure paints individually, it can create so much just prettiness. Okay, so let's get started. So as this video isn't really about drawing, I'm going to run through this stage, but I just want you to notice how I draw as a preparation for a painting. This is a little different than drawing as a final product, keeping it very clean, not filling up all of the areas, and just trying to place the lines of shadows and light so that I know where to put them later on. This is kind of a mechanical object, lots of straight lines, a bit of perspective, and this is one of the things that I'm actually naturally good at. If you let me paint something that's more organic, like people or animals, it can be a little more of a challenge. For me, I really love this. This is the one thing I'm really naturally, I think, gifted in. So in any case, I'm building it up and marking where the shadows are going to be, where the light and dark areas are, a bit of the horizon line, and this one's ready for painting. And just final details here and there. The most little that I'll actually need to continue. So now comes the magic, okay? And I'm starting with a pure Phthalo Blue. Okay, it's pretty pure. It's maybe just a little contaminated by some violet, but now you get to see it really shining. And immediately, right off the bat, I want to contrast this with some more orangey kind of color. So I'm using a bit of Pyrrole Scarlet, and you see it's bleeding into one another in a very rough manner because one is drier than the other, and that's fine because it's just the initial layer and it's all going to be super dark in any case. Putting in some more Phthalo Blue, wet in wet, but you can still see the individual paints, okay? And I want to show you how by allowing the individual paints to shine through, it adds so much grace to it. So now I'm using a bit of yellow, and I'm mostly avoiding the areas that I just painted so they don't bleed too much into one another. Only in the middle they touched a bit, so now you can see some yellow move into blue and blue move into yellow. But notice how much interest we already have. And really, the color doesn't matter this much. All that matters is to get the value right, so you can use that to your advantage and put in many colorful things. Now, as I mentioned, sometimes even when I get all the values right, the colors still displease me, and I feel like they don't transfer the mood that I want to. And this is a really good way of showing you how by just putting all colors in there and keeping it pretty much harmonious, then you can get this beautiful result. Now here it's just one big black stain for me, or dark stain. You know, I don't go through the individual parts as much because you can see it's just pure black with some highlights in between. I even skipped the one at the more bottom, and I'm just filling it up. Trying not to paint anything that touches it for now, because the moment it touches it, like you saw earlier with the window, with the windshield, it's going to bleed into one another. So I'm just going over the darker areas. You see here I avoided touching the light green as well. And I find really that if you can use at least 4 paints, like yellow, blue, red, and then maybe a green and a purple, it can really add a lot of grace to the painting. I find that some of my paintings, even if I nail everything, can be a little dull and boring if I don't have at least the 3 primaries individually, like blue, red, and yellow. If I don't show a bit of each one of those, then something's missing. And the green even helps a little more because it's still a very prominent color in many of the different things that you'll find yourself painting, especially if you're working on landscapes. So already notice how much interest we have here. Now I felt like red was missing, so now I'm putting in that strong shadow there with red, and then switching a bit to blue because it should be a little darker, and my blue can get very dark, but my red a little less than that. Even though it can get very dark. And you see all of the left side, I kind of let it go for now, and I will fill it up later on. So yeah, the one fault I would say with this painting that I could have done a little better is to have more pure yellow. My yellow was heavily contaminated by the green, and so all of the yellows almost in this one are yellowy green, aside from the yellow-orange on the top of the hood, I guess. And this yellow that you see right here. So I'm putting in that yellow and carefully working my way around the different highlights as well as around the areas that I just painted. And now I'm connecting this blue, just for the darker part, the blue-green, with what I already have. And you can see now that's another side of this kind of vehicle tractor that we're done with. I find that these kinds of objects work really well for these kinds of colorful exercises. Although you could use an endless amount of subjects and it will still look good, like even animals. There's a very popular kind of more modern approach to watercolor that does colorful animals. That's something I see a lot of. So now I'm putting in that wheel, and this is still a lot of the values here are going to be pushed to be much darker later on. Okay, even the ones that you think are now pretty dark are going to be much darker. The shadows on the front, I'm going to make them significantly darker. Now I wanted to introduce another color, so I'm introducing Carbonyl Violet on that tire at the back. This is a magical paint that can get really, really dark. All of the paints I'm using here are Daniel Smith, except for the Phthalo Blue. Okay, and the Phthalo Blue is prominent here. So here is a mix of Phthalo Blue and the Chromium Yellow, or rather Hansa Yellow. And now I'm just going to put in a bit of trees here, wet and wet. While it's still wet, I'm just putting highly pigmented blue and red, a bit of red in there as well. Some shadows here, and this is just to create a contrast with the left side of the tractor vehicle because it'll make it pop. On the right there isn't too many highlights, so I'm just filling it up, blurring some of the edges. This isn't meant to be like a complete painting. It's kind of a looser approach. What I wished I'd done is used a bit more of the non-contaminated yellow here on this very part I'm working on right now, but that's fine. That's part of it. You learn. But in any case, it goes to show you how the colors do play an important role in creating interest and harmony. Although not a must in many cases, they are rather important to sometimes direct the attention and make a piece work and pull it together, you know. So now you see, I'm not too worried about the negative painting not being perfect. There's this weird shed there at the back. I just thought I'd throw in something there. Now this is where it gets interesting. You see, I'm just observing the shape I see from the of the car and just replicating the shadows as I see them, trying to follow them as closely as possible, but I'm not going to be too worried about getting everything there right. It's already pretty expressive, this painting in its nature. There's the steering wheel that I did want to get in there, so you see I negative painted around that. A bit of a shadow there in the window. And then we have all of these little details. I'm going to add them while I'm adding the darker shadows to some areas. There's the hood parts, you know. But again, I'm not too obsessive or obsessed about getting each and every line there to be as accurate as possible. This is more of a demo kind of thing, so you can see all of the colors work in there. But I did learn that even if you drop one color in a non-pure way, it can have an effect if you already are going to work colorful. So now you see me mix the Phthalo Blue once again and the Hansa Yellow medium. These create a beautiful, beautiful green that you see here. I find that greens and blues for the shadows work really well for me if we're already talking about being more expressive and really showing each and every little detail in the way you want it to. Then I find that these two work really well for shading. Another thing I like is to
let red and blue be close to one another, because that creates a difference in temperatures, warm and cool. And you can see that definitely where the driver's seat is. There's the red on the right, blue on the left, and they work really well together. And this is the kind of effects that you can expect to get by mixing the warms and cools. And many artists, including myself, I would say, love to approach this more in a warm and cool spectrum. That's all they care about. I do find colors sometimes to be fascinating and still want to dive deeper into that. So there's the two metal plates at the very front, which need significant darkening, and I'm going to do that in just a few moments. And just negative painting around them for now. They seem like they're disconnected from the painting, which is what happens when something is too light. Okay, this is something I want you to have in mind. When something's too light, usually it tends to look a little off and disconnected. And this is what we've got with them, but you will see as soon as I add them in, it'll kind of anchor them into the scene and just, I hope will be beautiful. This shadow here on the side of the wheel really could use some more darkening. And this shaded area moves even more to the left. When I see these kinds of vehicles that have a lot of rust in them, it immediately pushes me to use a lot of colors. I don't know why. That's one thing that naturally happens. When I work on landscapes, it happens less naturally. I don't usually gravitate towards doing that. But with this one, it really felt like a natural progression to work in that way. Now, this part should be a little darker, so I'm adding kind of the middle values in between where necessary. This bottom area of the vehicle also felt like it needs to be a little darker. Blending that in with a drier brush, as I showed you in the blending video. Be sure to check that out if you want to see more of that. Putting some wet in wet just because it didn't seem dark enough, so I felt like darkening it a little more. And a lot of what I'm doing is mixing, and some of that you see, some of that you don't see. But the mixing is most of the painting, really. So here I'm putting in those plates that I was talking about earlier, and notice how it immediately anchors them. Now they should be a little darker, so I'm doing some wet and wet. Now they feel like a real part of the painting. Now we still have that dark mass in the middle, and to differentiate that, I'm going to add some of these very strong dark, pure, almost pure, pigment, no water, just to create that kind of feeling of details in the shadow, because we don't tend to see all of the details that are in the shadows. So just suggesting them with almost dry brush can really help, or even wet and wet can really help bring them out in a realistic manner. Same goes for the steering wheel here, just increasing the contrast on some of those details. There's the frame around the windshield, some of these different mechanical, details on the side, these grills here. And these are all just final stages. They are not what makes the painting beautiful, even though a lot of people mistaken that for the important thing. It's not. It's really the large masses of shapes. So the big mass of red, and then the big mass of green at the front, and the window and the background. All the large shapes are the ones that really make this look good, in essence. So really just final touches here and there. It's like Joseph's book, which tends to say, it's like the jewels. It's not really the most important part. And I'm just going to sign this, and now I'm going to, in just a moment, show you the final result. I was really loose with the background as well, as you can see. So in any case, let's wrap it up.
Okay, so I'm done here. I really hope you enjoyed seeing this quick process. And as you can see, the colors here is really what brings this together and creates a lot of interest. And what I find is really you need to have a bit of all of those. So the three primaries, we've got the yellows, the reds, and the blues, relatively pure, not pure, but relatively independent maybe. And then also a green, I find it helps me a lot. I don't have too much purple here because the red I'm using again is a warm red, and the blue is, well, basically it's the, the phthalo blue and the pyrrole scarlet, and these tend to neutralize each other, so we don't have that much here, but still a very interesting result. I think there's a lot of oranges as well. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this one. Let's wrap it up. So this is it for today. I hope you'll take this advice and really apply it and make your paintings so much more beautiful. This is again something I mentioned in several of my previous videos. I talk about it a lot, just preserving the purity of the paints, and I think even if you mess some things up, the color harmony is important. You do want to allow different paints to show through. This is something I've been dealing with a lot, and this is why I wanted to share it with you. I tended in the past a lot more to gray out everything, to overmix, to create just a lot of browns and grays and dull colors. And that's fine if you're going for that style and you really nail everything, but for me I felt like something was missing, and I would make a painting that had everything but maybe yellow, everything but red, everything but, and it would make a world of a difference if I would just incorporate a bit more of the pure paint that I'm missing. Okay, so this is an extreme example of showing you just get a lot of paint in there, and as long as everything else is accurate, you're good to go. Now, one more word about drawing and accuracy, and this is really an insight that I've thought about a while ago. Like, drawing is really important. If you get the drawing right, sometimes it will be hard to mess up with the paint. You really will need to trash it completely, because the drawing just plays a really important role, and the skill of drawing is super important, even if you just want to paint, because you do need a basis that is relatively accurate. And I also think that drawing improves your visual skills in general. It allows you to better see values when you paint, and so I just highly recommend working on that skill. And I will put, as always, a link to my beginner's drawing course in the description box below. So if you want to improve those skills, be sure to check it out. Okay, I think you'll find it really helpful, because I now published also the how to shade course. Okay, so I launched the second one as well, and you can get both the second one for a major discount if you buy the first. So I really hope you check these out in the description box, and there's also going to be a link to my podcast and Patreon page and Instagram and all of those good stuff if you want to see some works in progress, things like this. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you again in another vid real soon.